Number 1.
This all started about 1 year ago, this very month. We had been kicked out of our old house due to the landlords selling it out from under us without warning. We had a 2-week time frame to move out, so naturally, we started searching for a new house to move into. After searching for about 2 or 3 days, we found a house for rent which was only 2 blocks away on East Elm Street. We looked into it, and although it was a rather disgusting house, it was the best we could do, so we moved in and got settled down. The first thing I noticed that sent a chill down my spine was that someone carved a satanic circle into my closet door. As eerie as this was, there wasn't much I could do about it. For months, nothing at all happened, but one day we were doing some renovations. My parents had bought white paint, which was the same color as the closet door, so naturally, I asked them to cover the circle up. After they did so, things got very bad. My dreams were plagued by a dark figure with long, sharp fingers. Eventually, I stopped having natural dreams and started having out-of-body dreams, astral projections, or whatever you call them. One night, it got very, very bad. In an out-of-body dream, I was in my room, looking at my sleeping body. Out of the corner of my room came the same dark figure, who made its way to my bedside. It had slid its hand through my hair as a lover might, and then began to strangle me. I woke up with a bruised neck and a heavy loss of breath. This was the final straw for me. The next morning I brought it up with my mother, who had went as white as a bedsheet when I told her. She had been having nightmares of the same figure. However, it never got as bad as how I had it. We immediately started searching for a house, and within a week we were long gone. When we had loaded up the last of the boxes, we started to drive away. I looked out the window towards the house for some reason, though I wish to this very day that I hadn't, because in the window of my old room stood the tall, dark figure. It was staring right at me, and I felt a deep burning sensation in my chest, as though pure hate was being shot into my soul by this thing. To this day, I can't sleep peacefully without worrying about it showing up in my dreams.
Number 2.
My partner of 5 years and I were traveling out of town to Santa Rosa, California to see a friend who was staying with her boyfriend just this past weekend. She was also from the same city we were from, and it was going to be her last time hanging out with us before she moved in with him and started her new life. We hit some bars with her boyfriend as a designated driver, and we get drunk, we got crazy, and Dan and I got dropped off of our hotel a little past 2 in the morning. Just a little later, I want to say about 3 a.m., Dan woke up in tears. I was a little annoyed because he tends to get emotional when he's drunk, and our plans were to get up early and head out to San Francisco the following day. "Babe, there's something in here with us." "What?" I thought he was just being delusional. "Yeah, she says her name is Maria Sanchez," and he points to the far end of the bed. "And she's standing right there," he sobs. "Can't you see her?" I looked. "No," I said. Dan started describing her. She was a Hispanic woman who wore an older style of clothing, probably from the 60s or 70s, and with short, dark, curly hair. Her neck was dark purple. Perhaps she died of asphyxiation, he suggests. Anyways, he explains to me she is sad and lonely. I was annoyed with his description, as it was keeping me up, so I scolded him. "Well then tell the bitch to go away." "Dos pendejos. That's what she's saying," cried Dan. "What does that mean?" Okay, so I know my partner doesn't know Spanish, not even basic Spanish. In fact, his language learning skills suck. I speak another language, which I've tried teaching him, but it failed, as he didn't remember much of what I've taught him. And as for myself, I studied Spanish for a little while, but not seriously enough to be fluent. Anyways, I was a little freaked out now. How did Dan know those Spanish words? So I started taking him a little bit more seriously. So between the ghost, Dan, and myself, we had a long conversation. I apologized. Lo siento. I then asked her, the spirit, to leave, which she refused to do. I tried to get a hold of our friend and see if we could possibly leave and stay with her and her boyfriend instead of here for the rest of the night, but she never picked up. I couldn't blame her, it was 3 in the morning. Anyways, through Dan, he told me she was searching for her 2 children and asked if we could help her find them. Throughout the conversation, Dan also mentioned she called us dos mijos and dos muchachos, and this part makes my skin crawl. He started blurting slurred phrases in Spanish that were too advanced for me to understand, So how does this make sense? Dan knows no Spanish. Zero. Dan starts crying again. If we leave here, we will die, she says. And then it gets a little freaky. Dan got really quiet, and as he laid in the bed of our hotel room, his eyelids started flickering and his eyes were rolled back, and he starts yelling and shouting these almost diabolic sounding phrases in Spanish. It was like a scene right out of a horror movie. I froze. I was scared stiff because I knew right then what was happening. Dan was getting possessed. He came to his senses. What just happened? He panicked. I didn't know how to explain it to him. I was so scared, but I told him, "We're packing up and we're leaving now." It was 4 in the morning. Dan then told me that the ghost had apologized and told us not to leave and that we were good boys and that she would like for us to spend the night. We packed up and leave and head out because there was no way we were going to spend the rest of our night there. I go to the lobby to check out and explain to the receptionist that there was some freaky shit going on in that room and that we needed to leave. The receptionist apologized and said maybe it was a prank from people from the next room over. I was like, no, the things that happened in there and the things that I saw in there was no way Dan magically learned Spanish, and the way his eyes looked when he was possessed, it gave me the chills just thinking about it. I honestly don't even know if he grabbed everything from that hotel room. We spent the night in it, but we knew that we weren't going back in that room, and it was out of our budget to get another hotel, so I made the decision to drive us back home, even though it would be a 4-hour drive. Dan was so shaken as we were driving home, saying things like, "She says we're gonna die, babe, and what if she followed us?" I replied, "No, we won't," and I had hoped she hadn't latched on to Dan somehow. I was so tired, but we made it back home, and we lived to tell the story. I've never been a believer of ghosts, but this experience has changed my mind.
Number 3. I've been working as an intern in a state park with my supervisor Katie for the past couple of weeks. Today we had a discussion that turned into the paranormal, and she told me about something that happened when she was a teenager. She tries to debunk crazy things that have happened, but this one she hasn't been able to figure out. It was the summer after she graduated from high school, sometime in the second half of the 1990s. She was 18 at the time. Her friend Billy was a few years older, but still lived with his mother in their house. This was a small city in western Maryland, and Billy's house had just enough land that he could throw raging day-to-night summer parties complete with bonfires. At the same time, they weren't totally isolated, and random people from surrounding neighborhoods would show up to his parties all the time. One day, Billy met this skater kid named Nick at a park one morning, and being the social animal guy, Billy invited him to hang out with him at his house. Billy probably also took some pity on Nick, because Nick told him he was a runaway who was living at the park. They would basically play video games, go on rides, and party till late at night. Nick started showing up every day at Billy's house, knocking on the door at 7 a.m. sharp and engaging him in the morning till night drinking. He was about 16 with dark eyes and dark spiky hair. Remember, this was the 90s. And he seemed fairly normal and everything except for a couple of things. The first was that he always wore the same thing, a plain t-shirt and a pair of camo print cargo shorts. Despite the fact that he was sleeping at a park, his clothes always looked clean. The second is that he was never seen eating or going to the bathroom, despite the fact that Nick was drinking heavily with Billy. Finally, oddly enough, no one remembers actually feeling Nick's skin, even my supervisor, who had sat next to him during a road trip. She hung out with Billy and Nick at Billy's house 2 times, and each time she and her friend felt like something was very off with Nick, especially when he would give off this laugh that just sounded very evil and maniacal. He also seemed to get weirder when they went on a road trip and got farther away from Billy's city. Nick would also never shut up about his father's gun collection. Finally, Billy's hospitality reached its limits. After 2 weeks of waking Billy up at 7 a.m. to go party, Billy snapped at Nick. He told Nick that he was waking up his mother, who was trying to sleep, and that he's been hanging out at his house all day and night for 2 weeks straight, and that he really just needs to come back later. Nick never showed up again. Billy came to Katie a little bit later with a newspaper article. It was about Nick, who had apparently killed himself. Billy was originally upset because he felt like he must have put Nick over the edge when he kicked him out, until he checked the dates. Nick had killed himself with his father's shotgun over 2 weeks ago, before Billy had met him. He had escaped from the mental asylum his parents had put him in that was located in Billy's town, got to his father's house, and shot himself with his father's gun. Katie has tried to come up with logical reasons for why this happened. The most logical one was that they screwed up the dates in the newspaper, and Nick had indeed killed himself right after his talk with Billy. But 2 weeks? That's a huge discrepancy. What gets me about this is that I've never heard of a ghost haunting that was apparently so strong that it could manifest itself as a solid human form, enough that it could fool people into thinking he was a person, and especially for that long. I mean, I've heard of ghosts saying goodbye right after their death, but nothing that sounds like this. And there's the fact that he interacted with a lot of people, not just my supervisor and her friend. He was acknowledged by other people who came into Billy's house, not just Billy and Katie. Hey, what is up guys? I hope you really liked the video, and if you did, don't be afraid to give it a thumbs up, and also if you have any sort of suggestions, whether for future video ideas or improvements I can make to the videos, don't be afraid to comment down below. I'm really excited to hear any sort of feedback you guys have, and I hope you enjoyed the videos. And thanks for watching guys.